afternoon, everyone. So we're here this afternoon for the regular meeting of the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, Wednesday, August 21st, 2019, 2 p.m. Stephanie, would you please call the roll? I'm here. Here.
Here.
Thank you. All being present. Items presented for the first time. Number 1, 20.009, request from the Comptroller's Office for approval of contracts and leases for various city departments as listed on Exhibit A. Number 2, 20.010, request from the Comptroller's Office for approval of intra-departmental and interdepartmental transfers from various city departments as listed on Exhibit B. Number 3, 20.011, request from the Comptroller's Office for approval of transfers between projects for capital improvement funds listed on Exhibit C. Number 4, 20.012, request from the Comptroller's Office, Deputy Comptroller, for permission to securely destroy listed documents which have been retained electronically that fall within the GS or municipal state guidelines and are beyond the required audit period. Number 5, 20.013, request from the Mayor's Office for the approval of the Fifth Amendment to the Bi-State Development Agency Memorandum of Agreement pursuant to Ordinance 70349, effective August 21, 2016, which permits Bi-State to refund certain outstanding bonds. Number 6, request from the Director of Parks, Recreation, and Forestry for approval to replace an Accountant 1 with an Accountant 2 position on their table of organization. Number 7, 20.015, request from the Director of Airports for approval of board bill to be determined. This ordinance approves the Second Amendment to the operating agreement with ABM Aviation, Inc. for management and operation of parking facility services at St. Louis Lambert Airport. And number 8, 20.016, request from the Director of Airports for approval of board bill to be determined. This ordinance approves an airport aid agreement with the Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission to reimburse the city up to $515,000 for direct costs incurred for the marketing and promotion of air service at St. Louis Lambert Airport. That's the extent of our agenda.
Just one request on the agenda, items 7 and 8. Those two items, because being down, we have not introduced these at all at the board level, so we don't have an official board bill for these yet, for items 7 and 8. So if we take those up at our next regular schedule meeting.
Were they approved by the Airport Commission?
They were approved by the Airport Commission, but what we would be approving here today are the board bills. We do not have an actual board bill.
You
yet
mean for this
the board
$500,000 for reimbursement?
Yeah, I don't know if the timing's an issue or anything.
Well, I did have that contract in my office. I understood there was a timing issue, but of course, you're the president of the Board of Aldermen.
Well, no, we don't have a board bill.
I
right now,
understand.
So we need a board bill. So, what is the timing issue?
I had the contract in my office for this to be put on in August as to help with the timing and whenever it gets to the Board of Aldermen. The Board of Aldermen should be up in about 3 weeks, but if we have already approved it here, then of course it would not have to wait to come back to the Board of E&A. But it's up to you, Mr. President. You appear to have some issue with this. I just bring it to your attention that it's already been heard at the commission. I have no other questions or comments regarding it. It's been approved by the Airport Commission. I have no argument with your stand. I'm just making you aware that it has an opportunity today. But if you would like to bring it back, that's your prerogative.
But before it can be fully executed, I would imagine the board bill would have to be adopted and passed by the Board of Aldermen. So if that has to happen, if that is the thing that has to happen before everything is done, whether we do it here today or not, really does not.
So you'd like to see it twice?
No,
That's
we'll
fine.
see
That's
it
what you're,
once.
well, no, we're saying it now, and you're saying bring it back again a second time. That's all I'm
No,
just saying.
No, I'm not saying that at all.
So you don't want it to come back to the Board of E&A?
It should not have been on this agenda to begin
We
with.
talked about
is
it
what I'm
originally
telling
about taking it off.
you. It
And
should
it
not,
does
it
now.
should have never been on this agenda.
Did you
to
speak to
begin
the
with.
airport director about this? That's the last question I have. I know you're on the commission. I don't know if you approve this or not on the commission. I'm just confused right
The
now.
airport commission is completely different from the Board of E&A and the Board of Aldermen. All three steps have to be followed. The airport commission did their job, right? Now it's over here for the Board of E&A and the Board of Aldermen. The Board of Aldermen has to introduce and adopt and pass a board bill that will then come back over to the mayor for her to sign. During the course of that process, where the Board of Aldermen introduces the board bill, the Board of E&A will take action on it. So whether we do this today or whether we do it when the board comes back in session, it's not gonna make a difference.
So my final
Because
comment to you, Mr.
ultimately-
President, is efficiency does matter, and that's it.
Ultimately, the timeline for the board to pass a board bill is governed by our charter, right? Which, you know, we cannot adopt a board bill here today, so, by law, we just can't do it. So, but this should have never been on today's agenda at all, so I would request that items 7 and 8 be removed.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
Is it appropriate to hear from the airport? No? Okay.
We can do that.
I'll second that. I don't think it matters whether it is done today or whether it's done at the next meeting when we can actually approve it with a board bill, after the board bill has been introduced. It was my understanding that, I guess the Board of Aldermen goes back into session on what, the 13th? You expect it to be introduced then?
Yes.
And then it'll take 3 weeks, give or take, 2 or 3 weeks.
No, not 2 weeks. It has to be read at least
3 meetings, yeah.
3 meetings, plus you have a committee meeting, that's 4 meetings. So 4 to 5 weeks after the board comes back in session, 4 weeks
Okay.
on the.
The 18th is
on
the next E&A meeting.
fast.
Yeah.
And nonetheless,
So
it
it
comes back
roughly
to
takes a
E&A.
month.
Well,
Is
it would
my
be on the
understanding.
next E&A agenda.
Instead of this one. Okay.
Yeah,
I just
yeah.
thought
I
we
mean-
would see it once, but like I'm saying, you'll see it twice.
No, we will not see it.
If we take it off the agenda, then
Because this is the first
It should have never
reading
been
of
on
it.
today's agenda.
We're talking about what's happening today,
I know,
not in
but
the
this should have
future.
never been on today's agenda. I don't
The
want.
mayor just read
I just
it.
want to make sure that we're clear that I'm not causing us to see it twice, because that's incorrect, wholly and absolutely.
Gee,
This should have never been on
I'm
today's agenda.
seeing it right now, and then Madam Mayor, you're saying we're going to see it again in September?
this motion that's before us is that
Can you
it
tell
would
me
be
what the
removed.
board bill numbers are for these 2 bills? I mean, if we're gonna see them twice, tell me what the
This
board
is,
bill numbers are. for
normal
the 2 bills.
procedure for E&A is to be
What are
efficient,
the
to
board
bring
bill numbers?
forth to this board of E&A and to approve
what
those
are the
items.
board bill numbers?
And you're trying to ask a question regarding the
The
Board of
board bill
Aldermen, and
numbers
this
that
is the
you-
Board of
nobody
E&A,
here can tell me.
Mr. President. This is the Board of E&A, and if you can
What
tell
are the
me,
board bill numbers for the 2 board bills that we are approving
this is not the
today?
Board of Aldermen.
Well, no, this is the branch of city government, and we need board bill numbers so that the
Each
public
branch
can
has its
understand what
procedures,
we
there's an
are.
efficiency that should be adhered to here. And what you're saying, according to the
We don't
process,
even have
we will see
board
this
bill
twice.
We
And if
don't
that's
even
okay
have-
with you, I'm fine. I'm
We're
not
not
trying
gonna
to
see
argue the
these twice.
point
These-
that
it
you would
was-
like a different process and
these two
procedure. That's up
items.
to you to have your own process, your own procedure.
It's not
I am
my
not
point.
arguing that point. All I'm saying is that we'll see it twice, and I'm not
I
certain
don't
that
know that I've
if
ever
we
seen them
see it
because I don't
today,
even know the
that,
program.
and we see it again in September, to me, that's twice. But of course, your math is different than mine.
All right, well, there's a request that we adopt a measure for board bills that we don't even know the board bill numbers for today. So this should have never been on today's agenda, which is why I'm requesting that they be removed.
Okay, you made a motion, I seconded. All in favor of removing these from today's agenda? Aye.
No,
Okay. These are removed and we'll see them again at the appropriate time. At a different time.
so they're removed, not deferred. I'm just making a point here for the minutes.
I move.
The motion was
It's
to remove.
Removed, yeah. I move
Yeah.
that we adopt items 1 through 6 as presented.
Second. Is there any discussion on items 1 through 6?
No.
All in favor of adopting items 1 through 6? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Items 1 through 6 pass.
And under additional items for discussion, Madam Mayor, with your.
Yes, additional items for discussion.
Yeah, so, a week ago, we sent a letter to the members of the board of ENA. We also presented it to pre-ENA, a request for, the issue of body cameras to be put on today's agenda. Somehow, these two board bills with no board bill numbers made it on today's agenda, but an item that was well documented that was sent to all the appropriate parties never made it on today's agenda. And look, I get it, I understand, you know, the first time I brought this up a couple of years ago, it was a hotly contested issue, but we're getting to the point here where items that should never be on the agenda are making it on the agenda, and items that were clearly requested to be on the agenda never make it on the agenda. When you look at what body cameras mean to us as a city, you know, the major discussion of body cameras began here in the wake of the Michael Brown shooting. And now the majority of police departments across the country and also in St. Louis County now have body cameras. And we're still sitting here, and it's to have it be this difficult to even get it on the agenda so that we can take a real look at this is just beyond me. And at the same time, across the last 4 years, we've spent nearly $11 million in lawsuits that were brought against the police department. We budgeted another $4 million in this year's budget in lawsuits to be able to pay out for lawsuits that will be possibly brought against the police department. In the 2018 budget, we budgeted $2 million and spent nearly $5 million in lawsuits, a $3 million increase, overage, right? And when we look at what body cameras can do and will do, they have been known to create better relationships between the police department and the public at large. We will have a solid record and document on what's happening in that interaction between law enforcement and the community. St. Louis County Police Department, the new program that they put in place, they're spending roughly $1 million a year, $1,015,000 a year for a 5-year program. So across the 5 years of that contract, they're going to spend roughly $5 million across that 5-year contract. We have been looking at this so long that technology has turned over so many times on these programs. So the estimates that I'm getting back that says what our cost would be, St. Louis County will equip roughly 700 officers plus police cars and the like with body cameras and holster holster monitors, so that when they pull the weapon out of the holster, the camera automatically comes on, and so on and so forth. And new systems within the car, GPS systems within the car, so that they can track the cars and also monitor what's happening with the interaction between the public and the police department. Our cost would be somewhere in the neighborhood of a little over $1 million a year. The rough guesstimate is about 1.4 million on the top end a year is what ours would be. And that pays for 100%, that pays for unlimited data storage. That allows us to equip over 1,100 officers with body-worn cameras. That allows us access to all of the redacting software, and they now have automatic redaction, so that you can say, okay, pick out this face within this video and automatically redact that face, or redact the audio, or whatever, and all of this stuff is now automated. Unlimited user accounts, unlimited maintenance and support. Anytime a camera is broken, they would automatically come out and replace it, right? Anytime something happens to the equipment in the police car, they would automatically come out and replace it. Anytime anything happens with the holster monitor, they would replace it, right? And this is the same system that St. Louis County is using now. St. Louis County has done an extraordinary job of vetting all the available technologies out there, right? And one of the other benefits is, if we are on a like system, just like St. Louis County, all of the CAD integration that happens, so that they integrate all of our systems together. If there is a regional issue, if there's an issue that goes across St. Louis County and St. Louis City, where our police departments need to respond together, there is a one-button click where it all rolls into one monitoring system and allows us to share data across platforms. It would be a huge, it would mean, so much for the city of St. Louis if we began moving forward. Also, looking at the history of this thing, we're sitting here now with a $23 million surplus. And half of it can be used for capital. This allows us to fund a body camera program today. We have money in place for police radios, because that's part of the GO bond. So radios are already covered in the GO bond. A lot of the other things that people have been requesting and say that, okay, we need to wait because of this, those things that already have a funding pool in place. So what my measure, the measure that I was attempting to get on this agenda, was simply to request the other members of the Board of E&A to support moving forward on body cameras for the city of St. Louis. Given that we now have the funds to do it, we clearly have the money to do it. The other items that we would look to be doing in the police department, everything from GPS systems to radios, all of those things are already funded. They're funded through our GEO bonds, and that's been outlined in multiple documents where those things would come from.
Okay, thank you. This is for discussion, correct? Madam Comptroller, anything?
This is for discussion, but I'm also going to request, since it appears that it was a deliberate effort that this stuff was left off today's agenda, I'm also going to request a special E&A be held so that we can take up this measure. I think that the longer the city waits, the more exposure we have. We still have not taken the basic steps to begin to heal the divide that exists across our community.
Madam Comptroller, anything? Okay, so if I could just say, I think that body cameras can be of a benefit to both our police officers and our residents and our communities. The reason we haven't done it up till now, as you know, we needed cameras in cars, we needed dash cams in cars to be replaced, we needed new computers in our police cars, we needed Geo in our police cars, and we needed new radios or new radio system. So that was a lot of money. This was something that was outlined a couple of years ago in a report from the police department, which said we really need these things first. So as you mentioned, these things are all
Part of the deal bond.
they're all either here or in process at this point in time. 2 years ago, we did have an RFP committee, as you know, for this. I've not seen the cost estimates that you've received. Clearly, like a lot of technology, it's gone, if it's $1 million or $1.4 million, it's gone down considerably to what it was a couple of years ago. So I would suggest that if we need to have another E&A meeting to discuss this, I'm fine with having a special meeting. I do think we need a new RFP process for this, because clearly what we had a couple of years ago is not appropriate right now to take the subject up.
Okay. All right.
I stand in support in any substantive change that would help reduce crime. And that does include body cameras, and I have stood there for many years as being the first member of the Board of E&A to bring the subject up, and it was voted down. So I have not changed my position, but I have to say that when it has been discussed at the Board of E&A, the work that comes after the meeting has not been sufficiently dealt with, and therefore I would suggest that we would have a presentation. It appears to me that the work that was necessary to implement the process in St. Louis County was followed through with. They have cameras, they have a system. We have talk here today as we had 2 years ago. I understand that we want to have another meeting for more talk. That is fine if that's what's voted today. However, I think that the substance is very much needed. The work that goes into putting together the process of implementing, making a determination as to how many police officers shall have cameras, making giving the opportunity for the police to weigh in, giving the opportunity for the public safety department director to weigh in. So I understand that this is being brought up by you today, Mr. President of the Board. You are the legislative head of this city, and I don't recall having very many legislative hearings on the issue, which I think is highly necessary so that we can move forward. But it is up to you at this table today. What will it be? Will it be once again another meeting to roll things for more discussion, or are we going to really literally take this issue seriously? And so that's where I leave it. I brought it to this board more than 5 years ago. You were a part of this board, and you were a part of the vote to vote it down.
That is not.
Okay, the records will show the truth, and that is what you will always say. I don't mind your characterization. That is your characterization. And then I will end my comments by saying it is the pleasure of this board, whatever you like today, Madam Mayor, Mr. President, it is your pleasure.
All right. First off, I'd say, 2 years ago, it wasn't just talk. 2 years ago, we actually took a vote to move forward with the program. And as of today, 2 years later, is my understanding that the city's still waiting on your signature on the contract.
There you go again.
So,
Now, I'm going to say this. I do not run this city. My title is CFO, not CEO. I do not run the legislature. At this table, if it is your intent to cause this city to believe that because there is a failure on your behalf or others' behalf that there was no moving forward with body cameras. That's shameful, Mr. President. That is absolutely shameful on you. That is just a shame.
Madam
That's
Council.
just a shame. That you would sit here today and say that there is some contract which is 2 years old, waiting on my signature, and
Yeah,
you've just
that's
explained how the
exactly right.
technology has changed. So is it that
It's too
your
late
intent
now.
that you,
You
oh,
might as
now
well
it's too
throw
late.
that one
So
out.
what
It's
will
been
it
2
be?
years.
Will it be that this contract needs my signature, or will it be that we move forward with some substance instead of some rhetoric?
No, hold on a second. First off, there's a process that we all must follow. So, before we can move on any of these issues, before we can spend any money on body cameras, we will have to meet, we will have to discuss it and take a formal vote, right? That empowers us to move forward with it. So, so there is a requirement by law that we do meet, we confer, and we take a formal action. What I was pushing for here today was to begin that process. Since it was not allowed to be on today's agenda, I'm going to request another special E&A to do it. 2 years ago, the meeting that you referred to 2 years ago, we did meet, we conferred, we voted. All the contract changes were approved by the mayor's office, by others, and so on and so forth, and it's still sitting there. You know.
Sitting where?
I'll just leave that one alone.
Okay, you will have to because you're incorrect.
Okay, all right. Just according to what the attorneys have relayed back. Now, I'm happy to hear that everybody supports body cameras. Happy to hear it. When we meet and we confer and we vote, I'm looking for action on the other side. I'm looking for it to continue to move now. It's clear that we have the funding to do it. The other things that we're talking about, everything from GPS systems, all of those things have been funded. And by the way, the new technology has GPS systems built into it, so it shows the track and the routes that the police officers and police cars have taken throughout the day. It has all of that stuff built into it also. It depended on which one we ultimately choose if indeed we go to an RFP. There will, and I'll put this out there too, there will always be a reason to hesitate and to say no, or maybe now isn't the appropriate time. But I think it's just incumbent upon this city that we begin the process of bringing people together, healing people, so that we can have a better operating, so our law enforcement operates better and more efficiently because the community is working with them. Every time there's a shooting, first thing that you hear is, hey, guess what? We need information to come back from the public. The public's not bringing information back because the public does not feel the comfort and does not feel a connection and feel that they have a relationship with the city nor the police department. This begins to help us throughout that process. So that's why I'm requesting this special meeting.
Okay. I'm going to throw out something for your consideration here. My office would be happy to form the RFP committee, to initiate, I should say, the RFP committee. I don't believe we need an E&A meeting, a special meeting, in order to initiate the RFP committee. If you are okay with that, my office will initiate the RFP committee. I am very interested in knowing more about what's changed in the technology. I think it is a fair statement to say that a couple of years ago, this was $4 to $5 million a year. I reviewed, but I reviewed the estimates at that time, but that's really a moot at this point.
Yeah.
But now we have, through really some good priority setting, we have done some of the things that we need to do for the police department, having to do with bond issues, not just for the police department, but for our whole city, but in this case. So I think my office will initiate an RFP committee to look at and see what's out there on body cameras today and attempt to find the funding. Is that
Thank you.
acceptable?
Thank you, thank you.
Okay.
And by the way, just for the record, the Board of Aldermen has had numerous hearings concerning body cameras, public safety and the like, and the police department over the years, which is why, you know, I continue to bring this back as an important
Right.
issue, because members of the board are out working within their community and
Right.
working to try to bring the community back
Sure.
together, so this helps.
Yeah, you know, we are very focused on implementing things which we hope will prevent crime, but we also know that it is important that we're able to have information back from the community and to rebuild that trust. So it's all an integrated approach here, and I'm very interested to see what we get on an RFP committee. So we'll initiate that
Excellent.
this week,
This
or
week?
next. What's today, Wednesday?
Yeah.
Can we do it this week?
We can get letters out tomorrow morning.
Okay.
Perfect.
So,
That's
tomorrow.
great. That's great news.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are there any other items for,
One other thing, another item that I had requested at the last ENA meeting was to have an update on Jefferson Homes.
right,
Right, that was another thing that was not put on today's agenda. Is Otis, and it's my understanding that, Dale Roussettes isn't, he's off today or something like that. Is Otis or anybody here so that we can get some update on Jefferson Homes instead?
I can give a brief update. I don't believe Otis is here today.
And then,
But-
before you do, I'd like to also request a formal update again, another formal update again, to
Okay.
be put on
The agenda.
the next agenda of the
Okay.
Board of ENA.
Okay.
And then also, before we wrap up, I'd like to also have, in pre-ENA, them to begin the discussions of what's happening with these agendas.
So-
And how things all of a sudden now are being removed from the agenda. It's just
Right.
beyond.
Well, can I make a point? The items to be put on the agenda actually should be sent to the ENA secretary, and those items that are sent to the ENA secretary should end up at pre-ENA. When they are if you bring items with you to pre-ENA that have not been sent to the ENA secretary, it is on you whether,
all of that.
That's what I was asking.
please understand that there is a process, but I do know that you all
And the
have
process-
issues, and you cannot dictate the process unless you're able to hear. Now, the secretary has said to me that she has mailed out several times the process. She can speak for herself. She's sitting right
No,
here.
I'm not-
She
this
has,
isn't about
she
the
has,
secretary.
well, she has
This
sent
is
the
about-
process, and you're speaking about process if I'm not incorrect. This is about process. I am only saying that if you send the items which you would like to be put on ENA, then they will show up at pre-ENA. And I know I've repeated that probably 3 times now, but it's necessary for you to understand this is not about a personality issue. It's about paper, it's words of black and white on paper, 8.5 by 11, that you would send or email to the Secretary of ENA, and they shall show up at pre-ENA.
Everything that you said, we've done, right? And, and I'm not new to ENA. I've seen, I've seen that process work when it's convenient and not work when it's convenient. So what?
Convenient?
So what I'm going to request, moving forward, we need something that assures that we can do our work that we need to do here and that, you know, nobody's using heavy-handed tactics to alter the agenda at their will. So I'd like to look at that in future meetings. I'm not, I don't have all, you know, any recommended, you know, plan moving forward, but just, you know, just know that we need to do something to assure that these things that are clear, that should clearly be on the agenda, are on the agenda.
So my
And we
personal
discuss it.
opinion, if I can express that, I think any member of ENA should be able to request an item to go on the agenda. And whether it is before pre-ENA or after pre-ENA. Now, we recognize that, because of course it has to be published 24 hours in advance, so 2 o'clock on Tuesday, we've got to post this to be in compliance with Sunshine. But I think it's appropriate that anybody who wants something on the ENA agenda should be able to get it on the agenda. I know that in pre-ENA, sometimes things are discussed, well, maybe we'll take that off the agenda, and that's agreed to, and I think that's what happened today with the 2 airport bills. But, you know, I think that as a respect for one another, each of us should be able to request something to go on the ENA agenda.
Mr. President, can you tell me when the items that go on the Board of Aldermen agenda, is there a deadline that those items shall be accepted before they are on the agenda for Friday?
Yes, there's a
What is
deadline.
that deadline?
Certainly not a week, because
Can
our
you tell
stuff was
me the
presented a
date,
week early.
please? I'm just asking a simple
It's-
question.
We have a cutoff date Wednesday for a Friday meeting.
So
and
you
then
have a 2-day cutoff day?
and then-
Is that's your process?
Not a 7-day. Not a
So
7-day.
what you're-
Which, and that's part, that's
So
like
you're,
literally
the
part-
items that go on the agenda for
That's
the
part-
Board of Aldermen,
That's part of the rules.
the last day that you accepted is on the Wednesday. I'm just
Yeah, yeah,
asking you.
Yeah, yeah, so.
In
that's-
other words, what I'm
that's-
trying to come to is there is a process.
Yeah.
And I understand that the president of the board, you telling me your process, Madam Mayor, you've spoken about process and respect. And if you don't mind, I'm going to ask the ENA secretary who is sitting here.
No,
Please allow me to just ask if she has sent around the process for the Board of ENA where shall receive documents. Have you not sent that?
That is sent every month, 7 to 10 days after the ENA meeting. There is a communication that goes out to all department heads and members of the board that indicates when the deadline is for items to be either presented to the mayor's office or the final deadline to the ENA secretary.
And is that
Now, there is a
deadline more- is that
discussion of the
deadline a
items,
week
which makes
long?
it important that it would be somewhat a few days out. You don't have a discussion of the Board of Aldermen items outside with the 28 members or pre-Board of Aldermen members. That's not how it's done. It's done with the Board of ENA. So,
Is that-
well, we're just talking about process.
Is that
We're
an-
not
is-
talking about
is-
personality.
Where
And
did
what
that-
all,
where did
and
that
she
pro-
just said
Where
that
did
the
that process originate? Where did it come from? Is it in the city's charter? Is it an official act that's taken up by this body as part of the rules of this body? And the answer to both of those are no.
The answer is the same as it would be for the Board of Aldermen, Mr. President.
you have
All
to-
processes or
please don't-
development,
please
once you
don't-
have the law
you may
put
not
in
want
place,
to
and then you
walk
must
directly
enable
into-
that law to be adhered to
you
by
really don't
putting
wanna walk into
process.
that.
Well, I'm not walking into anything but
Yes, you are
policy,
with
and
that.
what policy is, it is well established. It didn't get established with my taking office, nor did it get established with your taking office. What we are doing is talking about professional courtesy here, and we're talking about making sure that each and every department would adhere to the professional courtesy of the other. And if the Board of ENA secretary has said that she has done her job, then I'm sorry, you cannot take that away from her, and you cannot
I'm not
ask her
saying
when it
that.
began. That is unfair to take this stage that you have here and to point blame on this ENA secretary or to the comptroller of the city. What is it that you are saying? What are you saying? I'm supposed to
okay.
tell you when policies began?
Look,
Are you really serious about asking me that question? Yet you have yet to answer fully the question I've asked you about the
If you give me a
policy and
minute, I
process
will
of the Board of Aldermen.
If you will.
So please,
Give me a minute, I will answer.
a minute?
Everyone may not even take that long. We take up our rules at the Board of Aldermen, which governs that, so that the entire body is part of that, right? What you're discussing here is something that is governing this body, that members of this body have no idea where it came from.
Then you should not be at the table if you don't know what you're doing here, sir. And I'm submitting that to you face to face. If you do not, you've sat here for how many years now? And you say you do not know what's going
It's
on?
something that was.
You don't know what's going at the table that you're sitting at.
You
You
have-
just said that. I didn't.
No, the opposite.
You do
of-
not know what's going on. You
Well,
do not know whether or not you receive every month from the ENA secretary the processes and
Please,
procedures.
please stop, because.
I have to-
Hold
could I-
on, hold on a second, hold on a second. Madam Secretary, you know I'm not saying that you are to blame or anything like that. You're following a piece of paper that was handed to you.
She
A
was
piece
not
of-
handed that. That's her job to
a
put
pi-
that together
a piece-
based on information received
Yeah, a
by this
piece of-
honorable board.
uh,
It is very obvious that you don't understand how
gonna
this
allow-
works.
are you
No,
gonna
I am
allow-
not. I am apologizing to this board on behalf of what
So
you were
you're
just
not-
saying,
so
because this
you're
is,
not
it's
gonna-
ludicrous that you
The
sit
board
here
needs
and not
to-
even describe what the process is.
The board doesn't need
That
it.
is, that's ludicrous, that you sit here and say that the secretary is handed an agenda when it is her job
It's
to
not an
prepare the
agenda.
agenda. You
The
just
se-
said it.
No,
There are cameras
the sec-
there. Oh my God.
The secretary was handed the process that was created by your office.
That is
to
not
govern-
true.
To govern
You're
this
not
body.
telling the truth.
Where
That
did
is
it come
not
from?
true.
Where
That
did it
is
come
not
from?
true. What you're saying and asking me now is,
Stop, just let's stop. Move
I'd like to make a motion.
forward.
yes,
That's
Madam,
great.
President.
I'd like to make a
Mayor,
motion.
Madam Mayor.
I'd like to make a motion that any member of this Board of ENA, the comptroller, the president of the board, or the mayor, can add items to the Board of ENA agenda upon their request, or remove items if it turns out that you added something, so long as it is done at least 2 hours before the deadline for posting the.
I don't think that's fair to the operations
Okay,
that we have.
that's a motion.
And I'm
Is there
gonna-
a second
Second,
Okay, now,
discussion?
I'm going to ask the ENA secretary to, because you're talking about her job. This is a,
I mean, I'm-
no, you are talking about a person's job, and what you just said, you want to have something added to, and I'm not adding to your comment, 2 hours before the meeting.
No, I did not say
What
that.
did you say?
2 hours before the deadline to
For the
post the
posting?
agenda.
Can you
Yes.
please comment on that?
I can speak to that because if everybody has an item and between 12 and 2 o'clock, the folders have to be compiled and the agenda has to be formulated. In the event that that item is not complete, how do I know whether or not it is actually able to be put on the agenda? For instance, there are contracts that have to be put on a special exhibit. That item could already be printed to prepare for these folders. And so that creates an issue because between 12 and 2,
Okay.
our rules say that we have to take lunch.
Okay.
So.
Oh, you have to
there's
take
no-
lunch between 12 and 2? Okay.
The employees
Oh, wait,
of the city of
So-
St. Louis do have
but-
rules.
But you're.
That's a department by department thing,
No,
but
it's not, it's
Madam
a, it's a
Mayor,
it's a
you're-
personnel,
You're saying
and it's a
2
labor
hours.
law.
2
Excuse
hours
me.
prior to our requirements by sunshine or whatever.
yeah,
for
that's what I was
posting.
saying.
So,
Sure.
so that would
So
still
maybe,
be-
maybe
that'd still
2
be-
hours is the wrong
That'd still
amount.
be 24
It
hours
just
out.
be added like any other item, and by amending the agenda.
Thank
and bringing the items
To
E
E&A. What is wrong with the office hold?
It's a tentative agenda. It's a
Well, it
tentative
still
agenda.
has to be posted.
It is posted.
It is
It's
posted.
a tentative agenda.
And it
Per
says-
the sunshine law, you have to post a tentative agenda.
And we have an attorney
And
sitting
you
at the
can-
table.
you
She
can
would like to
add or
speak on it.
subtract things from the agenda.
So I'm going to speak on my own motion. If you would like to have it be by, I don't, 9 o'clock in the morning beforehand. I wouldn't see that as being the norm, but I think out of respect for trying to do things in a timely way, should be about getting the business of the city done. And you know, the norm can still be, try to get it to us by a week before, which I think is your schedule, although I'm not, by the way, I'm not on the distribution that you send out of what the rules and timing are, but I would be happy to be, so if you want to add to that, that's fine. But some period of time where getting an item on the agenda is just out of respect for one another.
Yeah, I think that's.
Or if I put something on the agenda a week before and 2 days before I decide, oh, that's not really ready, I should also be able to request that you remove it from the agenda.
Yeah.
I'm just, because that sometimes happens, right? So that's all I'm asking for, is that it not be, that any member of the Board of E&A should be able to put something on the agenda or remove something from the agenda if it was theirs originally.
There has to be time to
Okay.
process the item.
Sure,
Yeah.
It has to be time.
okay.
So the same day is not sufficient. The same day that it's posted is not sufficient.
Okay.
The same
So
day
what I'd like to
prior
do is,
DNA is not sufficient.
so perhaps I can amend my motion to say, any member of the Board of E&A can put an item on the agenda or remove an item, their own item, not someone else's, from the agenda by 9 a.m. of the day prior to the E&A meeting.
Yeah. Because that still gives us, I mean, that's a good point.
But 9 a.m. the same
That's
day.
still the
it's
same
posted.
day.
Yeah, the same day of the posting.
And she
yeah.
just said that would be problematic.
That could be problematic, because what if you all have multiple items? And each item has to go on a specific way.
Can you talk about how many folders you prepare for this meeting?
16 for this meeting and 6 for the pre-event.
And you talk about the number of, for item number one, the minimum item for just the one, item number one, how many contracts are we talking about, average?
Average 35 or 40 contracts.
And so that is how many pages of we're talking about that you would have to take and start over?
Okay, I'm going to withdraw my motion, but I'm going to say this. I would like to speak with the other members of E&A to come to some agreement so that the, my personal opinion, a week is too long. But that's my personal opinion. I'd have to have something in a week before. It seems like it should be a few days at most.
Yeah.
So let's take this up at the, if it's agreeable, take it up at the next meeting.
Mayor, I mean, if the reps of each one of the three of you could work together and have something for next DNA, for you guys to consider.
Yeah.
I think the three reps of those present
I
could
think
put something
it's- I
together.
think it's-
Tom?
And I think that's what we've been doing all the time up until this meeting,
Yeah.
for whatever reason. There's been, I'm sure there's been plenty of items that you received after pre-ENA.
I think we should
That someone
review-
brought to you after pre-ENA
We
meeting,
should
and you
review
added
the
to the
current
agenda.
process and see what each member thinks
Yeah,
should
and
change.
so we've been, that's kind of, the process has been working up to now. And like I said, you probably received plenty of items after pre-ENA that was brought to you that ended up on the agenda. The pre-ENA agenda is usually not the final agenda.
Usually,
So you get items
I get
after
those on
that,
Friday.
which is within
and as late as Monday.
shorter than a week. Right.
And that's
Exactly.
sufficient.
That happens all the time at
But
pre-ENA
sometimes
because
there's
we
a
work
holiday.
together to do that. And
Sometimes
when
there's a
a
holiday,
pre-ENA.
so you have to.
Exactly. No, I'm just talking about the process outside the holiday. Just this time, there was, not the will to follow our normal process for whatever reason, so.
And frankly, removing something from the agenda should be pretty simple.
Yeah, that,
Obviously, miscommunication.
Okay, all right.
I just, just.
I would like for us to review the process, because maybe it is not as complicated as what it appears.
Yeah, I haven't, yeah. I'd be happy to see what the process
But,
was.
but I think that it needs to be clear what is communicated to the secretary, because sometimes what's communicated to me is not the same as what may have come out of a previous meeting.
And that's my point.
I'm sure that's possible, not on any intentional basis, but these are all communication issues. Mr. President.
Just moving forward, we need, I'm looking forward to the board the board of ENA taking up a real policy as it relates to this.
I am too.
On the time that I've been here on ENA, there's been a handful of times, and not many, that were just so as transparent as this one, where we turn the stuff in a week ahead of time, and then, you know, it's automatically just somehow not on there. Jefferson Arms' second request, right?
Madam
but-
Secretary, did you receive the
but-
Jefferson Arms document at all?
We took it up
Did
as
you-
ENA
Did you
as a
receive a
formal
document?
request.
Did you receive a document?
Actually, the only thing that was said was that Jefferson Arms redevelopment issue. And
We
respectfully,
were
it
going.
was not an item that.
Madam Secretary, I'm not gonna debate you here. I'm
Okay,
not
then,
gonna debate
now
you.
you're shutting her
I'm
down.
not gonna-
That's fine.
No,
You don't want to
it's-
hear the
it's-
truth. She
Madam-
didn't receive an
Madam-
item.
Madam Comptroller is in a, is.
8.5 by 11 sheet of paper.
Madam Comptroller.
Let's talk about this.
Well,
It's
okay.
incredibly important for
What did you do with
accuracy
the
and
other 8.5
effectiveness.
by
Okay,
11s
there
that we
you go.
sent you on the
There you
body
go.
camera?
I never received it.
Okay, all right, that was convenient.
I responded to my deputy that I was in favor,
All right.
and I got text messages to her to prove that.
Madam-
However,
Madam
you
Comptroller,
never
just-
followed through and sent it properly through. It's
That-
on you to be proper.
No,
to
that is
to
an
take-
arbitrary process you made
Now you're
up.
calling it arbitrary.
That's something
And you
you
blame it
made
on
up.
me.
You can't
So,
govern
like
the
I
whole
said,
board.
my title is CFO, it's not
I'm done
CEO of this city. I do not run this city.
You made
But
up
if you
an arbitrary
insist on
process
blaming me
that you
for
put in
your
place.
failings and shameful
That when you
actions
don't want
today,
when you
that's
don't
your
want something
prerogative.
to move
You're the
forward,
president of
you
the Board of
conveniently
Aldermen. You can
take
say
it
whatever
off
you
the
like
agenda, and you've done it
at this
time.
table, because that
I'm
is
not
your
gonna allow
intent
you to get
to
away with it.
blame.
Is there any other business
Point the
that we
finger
need
and
to do?
blame, and that's sad.
Did I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved. All in
I think,
favor?
Mr. President, I think, you made a motion to
Adjourn.
adjourn. Was that a second?
All in favor?
No, you need a second.
I'll be like this. All
Someone
in
should second
favor
it.
of
It's only three
adjourning?
of us. All in favor? Aye.
Who's?
I'm out.
Supporting